Meet Kale, 32 years old, successful consultant, six-figure income, respected by colleagues, admired for his composure and professionalism. On paper, untouchable. In reality, one comment away from a complete meltdown. Watch what happens in a Tuesday morning meeting. His colleague Diane suggests Kale's presentation to the client could have been more assertive, not aggressive, not confrontational, just a mild observation about communication style. Kale feels his face flush, his jaw clenches, that familiar rage building in his chest, the kind that feels righteous, justified, necessary. I don't think you understand the client relationship dynamics, he says, voice tight. Being too assertive would have alienated them. My approach was deliberately calibrated. But thanks for the feedback. The words are professional, the delivery is poison. Diane backs off, the meeting continues, everyone pretends nothing happened. But here's what actually just occurred. Diane accidentally pushed a button Kale didn't even know he had. She triggered something buried so deep that Kale genuinely believes his reaction was about client dynamics and calibrated approaches. It wasn't. It was about Kale's secret terror that he's fundamentally weak, that his entire professional persona is a mask covering cowardice, that his measured approach is actually just fear dressed up as strategy. Kale has no idea this is his operating system. He thinks he's defending his professional judgment. In reality, he's defending against a part of himself he spent 3 decades hiding from. And here's the kicker. Everyone who knows how to read people can see it. Diane saw it, the others in the room saw it. They don't consciously know what they're seeing, but they feel it. They sense the vulnerability. They file it away. Now they know, question Kale's strength, and he becomes predictable, manipulable, controllable. This is what psychologist Carl Jung would call living with an unintegrated shadow. And it's why Kale, despite all his success, intelligence, and achievement, will never be truly powerful until he confronts what he's hiding from himself. Welcome to the real path, to psychological invulnerability. Not positive thinking, not confidence building, not fake it till you make it. Shadow integration. The process of becoming unfuckable by embracing exactly what you've spent your whole life running from. The hidden puppet master running your life. Let me tell you what most people don't understand about themselves. You're being controlled by parts of your psyche you refuse to acknowledge exist. Not occasionally, not in moments of weakness, constantly, every day, every interaction. Jung called this the shadow. But that clinical term doesn't capture what it actually is. It's the counter identity to everything you believe yourself to be. Think you're kind? Your shadow contains extraordinary cruelty. Believe you're rational? Your shadow is wildly irrational. See yourself as honest? Your shadow is deeply deceptive. Everyone carries a shadow, Jung wrote, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. Translation: the more you insist, I am definitely not X, the more powerful X becomes in your unconscious. The harder you fight against certain qualities, the stronger those qualities grow in the darkness. This isn't theory. Watch how it plays out. Meet Lisa. Lisa prides herself on being empathetic and understanding. She volunteers at homeless shelters. She's always the first to offer emotional support. She posts about compassion on social media. Be kind is practically her personal brand. Then one day, her teenage daughter fails a class. Not because she didn't try, but because she was struggling with anxiety that Lisa was too busy helping others to notice. Lisa's response? Vicious, cutting. You're lazy, you're ungrateful. Do you have any idea what I sacrificed for this family? Where did that come from? Her shadow. All that suppressed judgment, resentment, and cruelty that she's been denying while maintaining her empathetic identity. It doesn't disappear just because she doesn't acknowledge it. It accumulates, it waits, then it erupts when her defenses are down. Or take Marcus. Marcus sees himself as a truth teller who doesn't play political games. He's proud of his directness, his authenticity, his refusal to kiss ass. Except watch what happens when someone criticizes his ideas in a meeting. Suddenly, Marcus is spinning narratives, deflecting blame, subtly undermining the critic's credibility. All the political maneuvering he claims to be above, he's doing it. He just doesn't recognize it as political when he's the one doing it. Because his shadow contains all the manipulation and calculation, he's disowned from his conscious identity. It operates perfectly well without his awareness or permission. Here's the brutal reality. Your shadow isn't a collection of minor flaws you prefer not to acknowledge. It's a complete alternate operating system running in the background of your psyche, controlling behavior you think you're consciously choosing, and everyone who knows how to look can see it. They can see what you're hiding from yourself. They can see the buttons to push. They can see how to destabilize you with a single sentence. That's your fundamental vulnerability. Not that you have weaknesses, everyone does, but that you have unconscious weaknesses you'll defend against recognizing even as they control your behavior. The projection trap, how you give away your power. And here's where this gets really uncomfortable. Let me introduce you to the mechanism through which your shadow actually controls you: projection. Jung nailed it. Everything that is unconscious in ourselves, we discover in our neighbor and treat him accordingly. Simple version, you see your own denied qualities in everyone else and you react to them there with disproportionate intensity because you're actually fighting with yourself. Let me show you exactly how this works. Nathan's story. Nathan is a manager, good guy, works hard, treats his team fairly, but he has this one employee, Derek, who drives him absolutely insane. Derek is always playing victim. Every time something goes wrong, Derek has an excuse. It's never his fault. Always circumstances beyond his control. Always someone else's problem. Nathan finds himself getting irrationally angry about this, not just annoyed, genuinely enraged. He spends hours complaining about Derek to his wife. He fantasizes about firing him. The intensity of his reaction is way out of proportion to Derek's actual performance issues. What Nathan doesn't see, he's projecting. Nathan grew up with a father who demanded perfect self-reliance. Showing weakness was unacceptable. Asking for help was shameful. Nathan learned early, never be a victim, never make excuses, never show vulnerability. So he buried all that. Disowned every impulse towards self-protection or acknowledgement of circumstances beyond his control, built an identity around absolute personal responsibility. And now, every time Derek does what Nathan has forbidden himself from doing, acknowledging vulnerability, citing circumstances, asking for accommodation, Nathan isn't responding to Derek. He's responding to the disowned parts of himself. He's fighting his shadow and losing because shadow battles always end with the shadow winning. Watch this play out in your own life. Pay attention to what triggers disproportionate reaction. The coworker whose laziness enrages you, probably projection of the rest you won't let yourself take. The friend whose attention-seeking irritates you, likely projection of needs for recognition you've deemed unacceptable. The politician whose dishonesty outrages you, possibly projection of the self-deceptions you refuse to acknowledge. The relative whose selfishness disgusts you, potentially projection of the self-care you've rejected as self-indulgence. Here's the test. If your reaction is significantly stronger than the situation warrants, you're almost certainly dealing with projection. You're not responding to the other person, you're responding to your own shadow material reflected back at you. And here's why this matters for psychological invulnerability. As long as you're projecting, you're manipulable, because anyone who can activate your projection can hijack your emotional state, cloud your judgment, and control your behavior without you even realizing it's happening. They're not actually doing anything to you. They're just reflecting back what you've hidden from yourself, but you'll fight them as if your life depends on it, because psychologically it does. You're defending against recognizing parts of yourself you built your entire identity on rejecting. That's not strength, that's a trap, and you're caught in it every single day. The weakness paradox, why admitting you're flawed makes you dangerous. Now we get to the part that breaks most people's brains. The counterintuitive truth that Jung discovered. True psychological invulnerability comes from fully acknowledging your vulnerabilities, not minimizing them, not reframing them, not turning them into opportunities for growth, but actually accepting that you contain capacities and qualities you've spent your whole life insisting you don't have. The acceptance of oneself is the essence of the whole moral problem, Jung wrote. Let me translate. The person who admits they're capable of cowardice can't be manipulated through fear of appearing weak. The person who acknowledges their capacity for cruelty can't be controlled through their need to maintain a purely virtuous self-image. Why? Because the leverage point disappears. Say Vera. Vera is a high-powered attorney, sharp, aggressive, doesn't take shit from anyone, built her entire professional identity on being tough. Then she's in a deposition. Opposing counsel trying to rattle her says, "Your line of questioning seems defensive. Are you feeling uncertain about your case?" Old Vera would have exploded. "I'm not being defensive. My questions are perfectly appropriate. How dare you suggest..." But Vera's done shadow work. She's confronted and integrated her capacity for defensiveness, for uncertainty, for fear. So instead, she responds, "You're probably right that I'm being cautious here. This is a complex case with significant implications for my client, so I'm making sure I thoroughly understand your client's position before proceeding." Watch what just happened. The attack found no target. The manipulation failed because Vera already acknowledged to herself what the opposing counsel was trying to use against her. She neutralized the weapon by claiming ownership of it first. This is the power of integration, not pretending weaknesses don't exist, not defensively denying them, but acknowledging them as part of your complete humanity, which removes their power to control you from the unconscious. Or consider Giraud. In Giroud's in a leadership position, he makes a decision that doesn't work out. Team meeting, someone says, "That was pretty short-sighted. Seems like you didn't think it through." Most leaders would defend, justify, explain why it wasn't actually short-sighted, how they did think it through, how circumstances changed. Giroud's integrated his shadow. He's acknowledged his capacity for short-sightedness, for impulsive decisions, for intellectual laziness. So he says, "You're right, I moved too quickly on that. I prioritized speed over thorough analysis, and it cost us." What would have been a more complete thought process? The attack becomes dialogue. The criticism becomes information because there's no shadow material to defend. This doesn't mean becoming a doormat. It means removing the buttons others can push to make you reactive rather than strategic. Most people think strength comes from denying weakness. It's exactly backwards. Denial creates the very vulnerability you're trying to protect against. True invulnerability comes from acknowledging what's actually there. All of it, the light and the darkness, the strength and the weakness, the virtue and the capacity for vice. There is no light without shadow and no psychic wholeness without imperfection, Jung wrote. The person who's done this work, who's truly confronted their complete self, becomes nearly impossible to manipulate because they're not defending an idealized self-image. They're operating from integrated wholeness. Integrated wholeness doesn't need defending. The integration process, making your shadow your weapon. All right, enough theory. Let's talk about how you actually do this, how you take the shadow from hidden liability to integrated asset. Jung laid out a path, 3 phases, each one builds on the last. Phase 1, recognition, finding what you've buried. First step, you have to identify what's actually in your shadow, which specific qualities, capacities, and impulses you've disowned. Jung's method, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Practical translation, whatever triggers disproportionate reactions in you points directly at your shadow content. Try this exercise right now. Think about someone who genuinely pisses you off, not just annoys you, someone whose very existence makes your blood pressure rise. Got 'em? Now, what specific quality about them bothers you most? Their arrogance, their neediness, their dishonesty, their weakness. Whatever it is, that's almost certainly in your shadow. You're seeing in them what you've forbidden in yourself. I'll give you an example from my own process. I I had this acquaintance who drove me crazy with his humble bragging. Every conversation, he'd find a way to mention his accomplishments while pretending to be modest about them. Oh, it's nothing really. I just happened to close a 7-figure deal, but honestly, anyone could have done it with the right circumstances. Made me want to throw things. Then I did the shadow work. Turned out, I had a massive amount of disowned desire for recognition. I'd built an identity around being above, needing validation, while secretly craving acknowledgement constantly. This guy wasn't doing anything to me. He was just reflecting back the need for recognition I'd forbidden myself from expressing. Once I acknowledged that need in myself, his behavior stopped triggering me. It became just behavior. Annoying maybe, but not enraging, because I wasn't fighting my own shadow anymore. Here's another recognition technique. Notice when you have disproportionate moral outrage, when you're not just disagreeing with someone, but feeling genuinely disgusted by their position or behavior. That disgust, shadow material. You're having an allergic reaction to seeing qualities you've exiled from your conscious identity. Even the political position that seems not just wrong but evil probably connects to shadow content. The lifestyle choice that seems not just different but morally reprehensible, almost certainly shadow. The personality type that seems not just unpleasant but fundamentally bad, definitely touching shadow material. The key is disproportionality. Normal disagreement is fine. Visceral revulsion signals projection. Phase 2, acceptance, owning what you've found. Recognition is just the first step. The hard part is acceptance, actually acknowledging these qualities as legitimate parts of your psyche rather than aberrations to eliminate. This is where most people fail because acceptance feels like endorsement. If I acknowledge my capacity for manipulation, doesn't that make me a manipulator? If I accept my potential for cruelty, aren't I cruel? No, that's not how this works. Acknowledgement isn't permission, it's consciousness. You're not saying, I should act on these impulses. You're saying these capacities exist within me as part of my complete human nature. Here's how this played out for me with a specific shadow element. I recognized I had disowned my capacity for passive aggression. I saw myself as direct and honest. Passive aggression was something weak people did, not me. Except it was me. When I looked honestly at my behavior, I found it everywhere. The slightly sarcastic comment, the withheld information, the strategic forgetting. Of commitments I resented, acceptance meant saying, I am capable of passive aggression. This is a real part of how I sometimes operate, not an aberration. I have this capacity, not I should be passive aggressive, not passive aggression is good. Just this exists in me. That acknowledgement was both uncomfortable and liberating. Uncomfortable because it contradicted my self-image. Liberating because once I owned it consciously, it stopped operating unconsciously. The acceptance practice. Take whatever you've recognized in your shadow and complete this sentence honestly. I am capable of, I have the capacity for shadow behavior. This exists within me as part of my complete humanity. Then sit with it, let yourself feel the discomfort. Don't minimize it, justify it, or immediately try to fix it. Just acknowledge it. This is what Jung meant by making the unconscious conscious. You're bringing into awareness what was operating in the dark. Phase 3, integration, transforming shadow into strength. Here's where it gets interesting. Integration isn't about eliminating shadow qualities. It's about channeling their energy constructively. Every shadow quality contains power that's been locked away because you rejected the quality entirely. Integration releases that power for conscious use. Let me show you what I mean. The aggression you've disowned can become healthy assertiveness. The person who's suppressed all aggression often can't advocate for themselves. They get walked over. But when they integrate their capacity for aggression, they can access that energy without it erupting destructively. They become assertive. They set boundaries. They push back when necessary. The selfishness you've rejected can transform into appropriate self-care. People who've disowned all selfishness often burn out from overgiving. They can't say no. They sacrifice endlessly. But when they integrate their capacity for selfishness, They can prioritize their needs without guilt. They become sustainably generous rather than martyrishly depleted. The deceptiveness you've denied can emerge as strategic discretion. Those who've rejected all capacity for deception often overshare, reveal too much, trust too easily. But when they integrate their deceptive capacity, they develop discernment about what to share and when. They become strategically savvy rather than naively transparent. This is the transformation. Shadow qualities aren't eliminated. They're metabolized into conscious resources. Practical integration example. Remember KO from the beginning? The consultant triggered by any suggestion of weakness? His integration process looked like this. Recognition: he identified his shadow contained massive fear of appearing weak, an extensive capacity for defensive behavior he labeled as professional boundaries. Acceptance: he acknowledged, I am terrified of being seen as weak. I have a strong defensive reaction to any perceived criticism. This is real in me. Integration: he learned to consciously access his defensive capacity when actually necessary, negotiating contracts, setting real boundaries, while not letting it operate automatically, responding to mild feedback. Result: when Diane made her next mild observation, Kale felt the defensive reaction start, recognized it consciously, and chose a different response. That's interesting feedback. What specifically struck you as insufficiently assertive? The shadow quality didn't disappear. It became a tool he consciously deployed rather than an automatic reaction controlling him. That's integration. The shadow stops controlling you because you've claimed ownership of it consciously. The untouchable result: what integration actually creates. So what does this look like in practice? What does a person with an integrated shadow actually operate like? Let me tell you about someone I know. Call her May. May works in venture capital, high-pressure environment, massive egos, constant positioning and political maneuvering, the kind of place where showing vulnerability is like blood in shark-infested waters. But May's different. She's done the shadow work, spent years confronting and integrating qualities she'd previously denied. Watch what happens in a partner meeting. May presents an investment opportunity. Another partner, Reese, attacks. This is naive. The market timing is wrong. The founder's inexperienced. Honestly, May, this seems beneath our usual standards. He's trying to trigger her, make her defensive, get her emotionally reactive so she'll fight instead of think. May feels the initial defensive surge, recognizes it, then responds calmly. You're right that the founder lacks traditional experience. That's actually what attracted me. Most experienced founders in this space have learned conventional wisdom that doesn't apply to this emerging market segment. But you know this space better than I do, Reese. What specific risks do you see that I might have missed? Watch what just happened. 1, she didn't defend against naive or beneath our standards. No reactivity, no shadow activation. She acknowledged the weakness Reese highlighted, founder inexperience, without being destabilized by it. 2, she reframed the weakness as potential strength while inviting genuine engagement. She turned attack into dialogue. 3, she gave Reese an off-ramp from conflict to contribution. Instead of fighting, she invited his expertise. The manipulation failed completely. Reese either provides substantive concerns or backs down from the attack, acknowledges he was just positioning. Either way, May maintains control. That's what shadow integration creates, not immunity to criticism, immunity to manipulation through criticism. Here's another example. A friend of mine, call him Dio, runs a nonprofit. He's in a donor meeting. The donor says, I'm concerned your organization is becoming too political. That's not what I want my money supporting. Old Dio would have gotten triggered. He built his identity on being purely mission-focused and above politics. The accusation would have hit shadow material, his unacknowledged awareness that yes, his organization absolutely takes political positions. He'd have defended, we're not political at all, we're just serving our mission. Everything we do is mission aligned, and the defensiveness would have confirmed the donor's concern. Integrated, Deo responds differently. You're right that some of our recent initiatives have political dimensions. When you're working on mission, you inevitably intersect with policy questions. What specific activities concern you, and what would appropriate boundaries look like from your perspective? He owned it, acknowledged the political dimension rather than denying it, turned accusation into exploration. Result: the donor didn't withdraw funding. They had a productive conversation about actual boundaries rather than a fight about whether the organization was political at all. Shadow integration didn't make Deo more defensive, it made him less so, because he wasn't protecting a false selfish image anymore. The dark side, why most people never do this work. Now let's be real about why this process is rare, why most people live their entire lives with massive, unintegrated shadows despite the obvious benefits of integration. 3 reasons. 1, it requires seeing yourself clearly, which is terrifying. Your self-image is comfortable, you know who you are, you've built an identity, even if it's somewhat limiting, at least it's familiar. Shadow work means dismantling that, acknowledging you're not who you thought you were, discovering capacities in yourself you've spent decades denying. That's not self-improvement, that's self-destruction and reconstruction. Most people would rather maintain a comfortable lie than confront an uncomfortable truth. 2, it removes excuses. When you project your shadow, you can blame external circumstances for your reactions. That person made me angry, they triggered me. I had to defend myself because they attacked. When you integrate your shadow, you recognize they didn't make you do anything. They activated something already in you. Your reaction is yours. Your trigger is yours. Your responsibility is yours. No more victims, no more justified reactivity, just conscious choice and its consequence. Most people prefer the illusion of external causation to the reality of internal responsibility. 3, it threatens social bonds built on shared shadows. A lot of relationships are really collusion agreements about what not to see in each other. Friend groups form around shared projections. Political movements organize around collective shadow denial. When you integrate your shadow, you stop participating in these collusions. You see what others are projecting. You can't maintain the same righteous anger about those people when you've acknowledged those qualities in yourself. This threatens relationships. People sense you've changed in ways they can't name. You're no longer reliably triggerable about the things your group bonds over hating. You become different, outside the normal psychological dance, which can be isolating. So most people don't do the work. They maintain comfortable fragmentation. They keep fighting shadow battles. They remain manipulable through unconscious material, and that's fine for them. It's not fine for you if you're reading this, because now you know, you've seen the mechanism. You understand why you're triggered, why you project, why certain people can push your buttons so reliably. You can't unknow this. The only question is whether you'll do something about it. Here, move, starting the integration. So here's where we are. You understand the shadow. You see how it controls you. You recognize the projection mechanism. You grasp why integration creates invulnerability. Now what? Start here. Pick one trigger. Don't try to integrate your entire shadow at once. That's overwhelming and ineffective. Pick one specific trigger that consistently destabilizes you. Maybe it's when people question your competence. Maybe it's when someone suggests you're being selfish. Maybe it's when your motives are questioned. Whatever it is, pick one and track it for a week. Notice when it gets activated. Notice your reaction. Notice the defensive story you tell yourself about why you're right to react that way. Don't try to change it yet. Just observe it. Get familiar with how it operates. Then do the recognition work. Ask yourself, what quality am I defending against recognizing in myself? If this trigger exists, what does that say about my shadow content? Be honest, brutally honest. This only works if you're willing to see what's actually there rather than what you wish was there. And practice acceptance. Say it out loud. I am capable of this, the quality you recognize. This exists in me. Feel the discomfort. Sit with it. Don't minimize it or justify it or immediately try to fix it. Just acknowledge it, then watch what happens. The next time that trigger comes up, notice if your reaction is different. Notice if there's a slight gap between stimulus and response that wasn't there before. Notice if you have more choice about how to respond. That gap, that's integration beginning, that's consciousness expanding, that's power growing. Jung said one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You're making darkness conscious. You're bringing shadow into light. You're transforming vulnerability into invulnerability through the only method that actually works: complete self-honesty. It's not comfortable. It's not quick. It's not what the self-help gurus sell, because they're selling comfortable lies that maintain your fragmentation while making you feel good about it. This is different. This is real. This is the actual path to psychological invulnerability that Jung discovered and that most people never walk. The question isn't whether this works. It does. The evidence is overwhelming. The question is whether you're willing to do what it requires, to see what you've hidden, to own what you've denied, to integrate what you've rejected. Most people aren't. They'll watch this, find it interesting, maybe even agree with it intellectually, and then continue operating from their fragmented consciousness because that's what's familiar. You're not most people. You wouldn't have watched this far if you were. So start walking, pick your first trigger, begin the observation, start the recognition process, practice the acceptance, and watch what happens when you bring your shadow into the light, when you claim ownership of your complete self, when you stop defending against recognition of what's actually there. You become unfuckable, not because you don't have weaknesses, but because you've stopped pretending you don't. And that paradoxical move, acknowledging vulnerability to transcend it, is the secret those rare individuals who seem psychologically invulnerable have discovered. Now you know it too. What you do with it is up to you.